there's something to be said for being a force to be reckoned with. You don't have to use it. And it just grieves me, how our country is having one too many, all of them are too many shootings and deaths and all those kinds of things. It's because we don't know how to do relationship. We don't know how to do conflict. We don't know how to deal with the tougher conversations. And, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't claim to be an expert. It's definitely complicated, but we're cutting people's arms off when it comes down to being able to interact in a way that's healthier, for sure.
Welcome to What to Say and How to Say It. We are continuing our love series, and this week we are discussing the verse, "Love always protects," and how that shows up in our communication. One of the things that we see often in communication or in conflict is a need to control. And a lot of people get control and protection confused. And I think it's good for us to understand the difference there. I know for myself, one of the things that often happens is I have to set a boundary when I feel myself getting triggered. And I know, Nina, this happens to you a lot as well. And it's something we talk about a lot at Greater Impact. But there are things that we can do in those moments that will show protection and not control. So I'd like to get into that a little bit and, maybe help our listeners show up differently in the future. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, as God would have it, it's an appropriate topic. Right now, I'm protecting a relationship from myself by staying away from a conversation for a moment. And it's been a minute. It's been like a day and a half. I just, this thing happened. Details don't matter, but I'm not in a place where I'm good to talk about it. I've been sick, so that makes everything even worse. But it's an emotional topic for me. So I've had to just kind of go, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to interact over it just yet. And the good thing about that is, it's a protective move for the relationship. I'm protecting the other person from my immaturity, because that's all it is here, honestly. And then I'm also protecting the relationship from damage from my immaturity. And so in those spaces where we get tipped over, we tend to react, and that feels like, well, I'm protecting myself. But the reality is, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're actually damaging everything around you. It's kind of like being a rabid dog loose in a china shop, or a bull in a china shop. Just everything just gets wrecked. And so the best thing that we can do sometimes to protect is to shut up and sit down and take a minute to figure ourselves out. Like, what is that that's gotten going in here? And most of the time it's something about us that's been, triggered, tipped over by the actions of somebody else, with something within us. And protection's a big deal. I think that we don't spend enough time talking about, in terms of how does love protect, and how is that different than control? But it's important. It's really important.
Yeah, it is important. And I think one of the things that is key about this is really having self-awareness in that moment, where your emotions are all over the place. And I think that is going to be the indicator of whether it shows up as protection or control. Because if you're truly loving someone, if you're truly loving, you're not thinking about yourself.
Right.
So it can look the same. And this is something we also discuss a lot with a boundary. Say, you're in a heated conversation and you need to exit the room. Sometimes that's done because you're just punishing the person.
Oh no,
You don't want
I've
to,
never done that. Well,
you know,
actually, I have. Yeah, there's a good.
I have
Yeah, I know.
for
Me too.
sure.
Me too. Yeah,
But I mean,
hate
you
that.
know, it's tough to really, do it in a way that's loving because we're so self-protecting, like just
Mhm.
by nature. We want to protect ourselves before we think about the relationship or the other person. But the action can look very much so the same, but have a completely different motivation. And
Mhm.
I just find that so fascinating. Because yeah, it's really about our heart in the end
Mhm.
and where we are.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is, some of the conversations I've had with my adult children. And I label an adult as anybody that, well, there's two definitions, right? You've got the legal age of 18 or 16 if you're driving a car. If you're in Kentucky, you can get married then, I guess. Whoop-de-doo. That doesn't make you an adult. But really, if you look at Deeper Walk International, Dr. Jim Wilder, I love his work. And one of the things that they talk about is, being mature enough as a human to take care of somebody else. That's the mark of an adult. Can you take care of yourself? And then can you care for and be responsible for someone else?
Yeah.
And yeah, and you see a lot of people out there that are of the proper age that are not really adults. So what are we doing in our relationships that is controlling versus protective? Moms that and dads that are helicopter parenting, and doing the sixth grade science project or, English writing essay with Adobe Illustrator for their child versus having that kid figure themselves out and put their best self forward, and then we wonder why we get people that can't function, that, kids that are in their 20s that have to order everything from DoorDash because they can't make a meal and they don't know how to clean a toilet. They don't know what to do with themselves in that space. And we're not doing anybody any service. Love protects not by making an easy life. Love protects by giving wisdom, by asking coaching questions, and probably the most important question I ever asked any of my kids was, oh, after they said, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. And then I'd say, so what do you think could go wrong with that? That's the most protective question. And they'd be like, well, nothing. I'd be like, well, are you sure? I mean, can we talk about that for a minute? And asking for permission, and then asking, what if, is it possible this could happen? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, because they don't have a frontal lobe. There is no common sense there till they're 26 to 27 years old. And they're wonderful, amazing, risk-taking creatures. I love all of my kids, all the ages they've been. And wow, it's hard to watch when you know that they're doing a thing that is like, whew. But to not let them do it is also controlling. But how does love protect in that? Well, you ask them. So, how do you feel about safety on the motorcycle? Well, yeah, I've been thinking about that. What happens if you wreck? Well, I guess all of your skin gets peeled off on the pavement. Oh, well, that sounds really bad. Is there anything you can do to improve that? Well, yeah, there's this safety gear. So, and then you spend thousands of dollars or whatever it is, on safety equipment or whatever there. And you hope and you pray, but you don't. Like one of my kids he's almost 24 and he's got a motorcycle, which I hate with everything in me. He knows I hate it. I'm not telling anything out of turn here. I also don't pay the insurance on it. Because I told him, I said, I don't want you to do this. And if you insist on doing this, I'm not going to fund it because I don't think it's wise. And he's like, yeah. Well, and the bike he bought it's not one of those, zippy fast things. It's an older bike. It's kind of a collector. And he's sufficiently concerned about it. And he's not doing anything scary with it. Not too scary. And it sits in my garage most of the time, thankfully. And he doesn't live with us. So I'm pretty good with that. But what does love protect? Love asks a lot of questions, and I'm really pleased with the stuff that he's done, safety gear wise around that.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell him over my dead body, you'll do this. Like I didn't make it,
Right.
And I wanted to be controlling, but I'd rather have relationship with him and hopefully have given him enough noose to hang himself, but not too permanently, because he mostly rides in the neighborhood and around up here and not doing anything crazy with it. So, and thank God for that. But, it could be a totally different story, right?
Absolutely.
He could want to be he skis aggressively too. He does dangerous stuff on skis, flips and snowboards, like does tricks, aeronautic stuff. I'm just, that's who he is, and, so what do you do with that? You pray a lot and you offer up questions, and then you walk with them. Like he broke his arm skiing a couple of years ago. It was a really bad break and it messed up a good chunk of his semester at college. And so we walked with him with that, and he's more conservative now, as is the case when you don't die.
Yeah.
But it's risky, right? Like, protection and control are two different things. Like you cannot.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough when you love the person and you don't want them to die. So, it takes knowing the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved how you brought questions, because this answers the question, what to say. How do you apply love always protects, and what to say. And it's a very gentle approach to bringing awareness to something that could be dangerous to those that we love, but you're still staying on your paper and you're giving them the freedom to make the choice for themselves. And that is the thing I think where people miss when they become the over my dead body. Well, now you're getting on that person's paper, really making the choice for them. And that's not protection, that's control. So there is a difference there.
I had a situation with my oldest son when he was in junior high. When his friends was getting picked on by this other kid, he was being bullied. And they have a zero tolerance policy for violence at the tutoring program. And he comes home one day and he's like, Mom, I got to tell you, I'm going to get expelled. And I said, okay, tell me more. And he goes, well, this kid keeps beating up my friend and nobody's doing anything about it. The tutor knows about it. She's afraid of him too. He's this big kid. The administrator knows about it. Nobody's doing anything. And I've decided that if he messes with my friend one more time, I'm going to step into that space. I'm going to clean his clock. And I said, okay, can you not throw the first punch? And he says, yeah. I said, okay, so if you're defending, that's different. And I got your back. And so my strategy of love protects in that space is to hand my kid a sword, right? So I went to the administrator and I told him, I said, I'm going to talk to the administrator about this. And I'm going to let her know that I'm not pleased at the inaction. I'm also going to let her know that I'm fully fine with you getting expelled because of her inaction on this and what's coming down the pike, because she's not doing anything. But if you end up defending this kid, I've got your back. Absolutely. You'll not be in trouble. Good of you to defend somebody who's not able to defend themselves, because his friend was, this scrawny kid. And this other guy was just a bully, big kid. And I don't know who would have won that fight, right? So I call up the administrator and I said, so here's the deal. And I tell her what's going on. And she goes, yeah, we've been wondering about that. And I said, so here's my issue with your zero tolerance policy. You're keeping good men from being men. And you're enabling bullying in your facility because you're not letting something happen. You're not doing anything, number one. She goes, well, we can't catch them. I said, then I would suggest you figure out something different because there may be a rumble today. And you and I are going to have a different conversation. But for my 12-year-old to have to stand up for this because you guys can't seem to catch it, that's not okay. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And I don't know what ended up happening. Nobody got in a fight, but the bully ended up getting expelled, which was kind of cool. And you know what? I wouldn't have cared. That sounds terrible. I know in this day and age, especially, you know, with school place violence being what it is. But the problem, so much of it is that people don't have a way of expressing conflict, and hands are tied all over the place. And so nobody knows what to do with the tough feelings. And, you know, when you and I were growing up, and I think I'm probably a decade older than you are, but we scrapped it out. And, you know, and no, there weren't guns on school property. Well, actually, that's not true. The janitor had a rifle. I grew up.
Well, you grew up in Montana, so that was a little different.
Yeah, that's true. It was a little different for sure. But, you know, it just, you know, love protects. You know, you think of the Renaissance period and the medieval times, and, you know, people, there's something to be said for being a force to be reckoned with. You don't have to use it.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it just grieves me, you know, how our country is having one too many, all of them are too many shootings and deaths and all those kinds of things. It's because we don't know how to do relationship. We don't know how to do conflict. We don't know how to deal with the tougher conversations. And, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't claim to be an expert. It's definitely complicated, but we're cutting people's arms off when it comes down to being able to interact in a way that's healthier, for sure, with all the rules and all of that.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it starts at home. It starts when we're babies, you know, and how we're taught to handle brother or sister, saying something mean. It starts there. And then, you know, if it's handled properly or with wisdom or with the word, you know, you don't see this kind of stuff happening. I mean, we do have sin, right? We're always going to have that on this side of heaven. But I agree. I think that it turns into something unfathomable when it's not dealt with, which is what we've seen this week. One of the other things that I want to bring up is you mentioned helicopter parenting. And, you know, I've been guilty of this, but it's this whole notion of wanting to protect, which, you know, based on what we're saying today, isn't really protection, but wanting to protect our kids or those we love from that pain or devastation. You know, for instance, speaking about the incident, the shooting this week, my inclination is to not speak of it at all, and call that protection, you know, but that's really not the best way to handle that. That's not the best way to love my kids. You know, it's almost the opposite, right? To not make them aware of what's happening and what's going on. And could you speak to that and how the culture gets that wrong, just by wanting to shield and shelter our kids from all the things that are really just truth and a result of, you know, being in a fallen world?
Yeah. You know, and I have a different perspective because I grew up in Montana, which, you know, they take fourth graders out for orienteering and they lose you in the woods. And the goal is to find the bus. Now, I think they had parents around there someplace, but I never saw them. And you've got a compass and you've got stuff you got to find. But survival skills are what we grew up with. You never left, like you couldn't go to the mall or the dentist. 2 hours, one direction from my hometown in the winter, which is most of the year in Montana. It's 9 months of winter and 3 months of bad skiing. And, you know, 2 hours, one direction. If you have car trouble, you may not see somebody for a day or two, right? They closed the highways because 4 or 5 foot snowdrifts would come across them. And then that's it, man, you're done for. And you better have a way of surviving in your car for a couple of days because nobody's going to come looking for you. So, yeah. So there's this grit mentality. And you're a Texas woman. So, you're tough as nails too. Right. So there's this mentality that comes with being able to survive in the woods or in the wilderness or whatever that's there. But then you also have this mentality that is absent with kids. Like we make everything so easy, and we don't want to do that. The grit and mental toughness is what's needed, so that we can then go out and conquer. And so I'm going to borrow a story. Dr. Jordan Peterson, he's one of the most famous psychologists in the world right now. He's a bazillion, whatever rating best author, best-selling author. He's out of the University of Toronto, and his stuff is all very data driven. So if he says something, it's based on double-blind gold standard studies that this is the way the world is, right? Mm-hmm. So he was talking one time about some relative of his who had a little boy who was having nightmares about a dragon. And the mom's inclination was to comfort and soothe, and mine would be too, man. You got a little kid and he's having nightmares and all this stuff. And Jordan's answer was, let's give the kid a sword, and teach him he can go slay the dragon. Mm. And that's really what kids need. They don't need rescuing. Rescuing is not protection. Mm. You want to teach a kid how to be protected? You teach them how to be strong. You teach them how to be tough. You teach them martial arts or Krav Maga, which is Israeli street fighting. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons the culture of Israel is as strong and as grit solid as it is because everybody, you turn 18, you're in the IBF. Doesn't matter if you're a girl or not, you are in the military and you've got a couple of years of service. That's how it works. The end. I've seen these Israeli women, beautiful, gorgeous women that can clean the clocks of 5 men at once because, yeah. And that's where confidence comes from. It comes from knowing that we're okay. And, that's why martial arts build confidence in kids. A lot of people go that route, teach their kids how to be physically strong. Mm-hmm. Definitely a thing to do, but it's not, let's keep you away from all the danger. No. Mm-hmm. No, the answer is not, let's hide from the dragon. The answer is, let me give you a sword. And then how about you go kill the doggone thing? And that makes you stronger because you faced it and you can conquer it. And if you don't, it's going to come after you. So figure out how to kill it, slay your dragons. And that's the face your fear thing, right? Yeah. That we all need. Mm-hmm. So love protects doesn't mean that I'm fighting your battle for you. Mm-hmm. It means I'm handing you skills. I'm walking with you in wisdom. I'm walking next to you in battle as you figure out your life and your stuff, right? I'm not making your life easy. I'm walking with you as you navigate the hardships. And sometimes I hand you a sword and I step back and watch and I cheer you on from the stands, or whatever it is. But I think that's what more and more of if we could just do that more for our kids and in our relationships, there's a time and a place to stand up and say, hey, stop that. Mm-hmm. The way to shut a bully down is to stand up to him. And so few people are willing to do that. Mm-hmm. It's always the right answer. And yeah, you might get the living tar kicked out of you, but you know what? You're gonna anyway. It's just going to look different and you're going to betray yourself and you're going to feel like garbage if you don't. So stand up in the face of bullying. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes for kids and adults. There's bullies in all shapes and sizes. And, the thing about facing our fears that I've learned is you discover a newer version of yourself, on the other side of it. And, love is the opposite of fear.
Yeah.
So if we look at it from that perspective, when anything comes our way that feels devastating, feels hard, if we just put on the cloak of love and walk right into that thing, the benefit isn't just for the other person, it's for us as well. And so, yeah, I love these examples you've given us today. Thank you so much. You have really given us a real picture of what to say and how to say it in situations where it's hard. It's hard to know what protection versus control is. It's hard to know, how to fight in difficult situations. It's hard to know when to get on your paper and off of your paper. So I really hope that our listeners come away with the difference between those two. And if they want to learn more, they can check out our website, greaterimpact.org. We have a free ebook. It's called Walking on Eggshells, and How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. And we also have coaching. We have courses, all kinds of goodies if they're interested. So check out our next episode if you're wanting to learn more as well. We've got a bunch of topics on our channel. Thanks for joining us.